fat loss experience changes when menopause hits. What once felt easier to manage, to lose and maintain, can now feel harder to outright impossible. Now look, I know I'm neither of that age or that gender, but I have done a large amount of research on the topic and importantly helped dozens of women navigate through these hard times and actually navigate through the challenging effects to getting some of the positive results on the other side when they're really struggling. So if you're someone who is really struggling with the lifestyle changes that have come your way and just want to know some ideas that might help, here are my 2 cents. As estrogen declines, there are changes. Changes to your appetite regulation, your blood sugar, your fat storage, muscle mass, and energy expenditure. So there are real biological signals pointing you towards increased hunger, increased cravings, less satisfaction from meals, an overall desire to move towards more calorically dense foods. There are things of decreased NEAT, so that's your non-exercise activity-induced thermogenesis. Whole sentence, just to say the amount of movement you do throughout the day that feels incidental. You're fidgeting instead of being still. You're standing instead of being seated. You're walking to the printer, that kind of thing. There are effects of your decreased muscle mass. So if you're not training, you might then have noticed an effect of less overall muscle tone, as well as a decrease of 100 to 150 calories a day. Look, there's variation in all these things. There's going to be variation that is definitely real. You'll even notice effects, unfortunately, on the sleep. Again, I don't need to probably tell any of you people struggling with this. You probably know this, but with the poor effects that it can have on sleep and being up through the night and temperature changes, etc., it can lead to the next day having increased cravings, less satisfaction from the exact same food, and that's because there are effects on leptin and ghrelin. These are the things that affect how hungry you get and also how satiated you feel from your meals. So these are absolutely real things. Next is an underrated thing which people probably don't put the amount of attention towards this time that it deserves, and that is that it often correlates with a time of life that can be quite intense. I'll make up a few examples. I'm sure some of these may apply, some may not. It might be a stage where you're now having to navigate dealing with elderly parents and the changes there. You might be now dealing with teenagers. You might be now at the peak of your career, dealing with the most stress you'll ever need to have. These things can all coincide at once, trying to navigate all the time with all these things, a busy schedule, trying to still get your fitness goals, still trying to see friends. It can be a lot. And this can add a certain amount of fuel to the fire that's already happening. Menopause doesn't lock the fat loss door. There's still all the same rules, but you are playing the same game now with more hunger, more cravings, less satisfaction compared to what it would have felt like in your 30s. So here's the considerations. It can be done, but there's less overall wiggle room for strategies that were arguably suboptimal if you have tried and had it succeed in your 30s that we just can't get away with now. We need to get some of these things just right. First is to reduce perfectionism and understand that you're not crazy. If we struggle to accept that there are changes and the same things that didn't work at 30 that are now not working now, it can lead to increased friction, more frustration, particularly if your brain is orientated to, I've got to be 100%. If you then aim for just good enough to get results and understand that we are dealing with different challenges we hadn't had before, there's less overall stress during the process. So that's part 1. Number 2 is to increase your satiation. If you are going to, and you most likely will, going to have more hunger throughout the day, and you're having the same food choices, that's just going to lead to more calories. If you can then instead have foods with higher levels of satiation, that is one thing that can help keep your calories at a good level while still having more hunger. Tying to this, if you can make your meals a little bit lower GI, so with the increased satiation effects, you might have increased vegetables, protein, things like that. That will also lower the GI of your meals, meaning that your blood sugar will be more consistent for longer. So you're having less of those negative insulin, blood sugar style cravings that can happen otherwise that you probably would have experienced. Number 3 is you gotta do weights, solid resistance training. This might be hard here. Group fitness after a while, cardio just isn't gonna cut it for the positive effects of muscle mass on your metabolism and overall health. And if you are dealing with the effects of slow muscle loss over time, there are too many downstream effects to not be getting in a little bit of training. You might find this hard to do, you might find it daunting, but finding easy to comply strategies that line up with your psychology and schedule with some real weights is fantastic. Haven't got to be a 1RM style powerlifter, but at least some weights, hitting all your major muscle groups, even with 1 to 2 sets a week, can make a world of difference. The other thing with the weights that are very important for you to navigate, and this actually extends to your overall amount of exercise in general, is if your sleep is getting worse, your ability to recover from more volume, either in the gym with the weights or running or whatever it is going to decrease. If you are doing more work than you can recover from, your performance is going to go backwards, you're going to have more stress in the body. That whole fat storage thing of the stomach can arguably be emphasized even more. And it's going to lead to you feeling like you'll be more ready to snap in the rest of your life and having more overall mental fatigue along with the physical fatigue. So it's something we've got to try and avoid. So goal would be having sustainable, lower volume approaches that still work within your schedule, because it addresses probably a busy time of your life as well, but also something you know you can definitely recover from and stay consistent with. Next thing we've got to do is pre-plan your routine. Move food to where you're actually hungry, or have strategies that are actually going to help you in the phases where you're now hungry in a way that you weren't before, but also line up the schedule with your probably quite busy life at this time as well. Doing things on the fly is a little bit easier when you've got to spare 20, 30 hours a week compared to probably the position you're in right now. So again, that pre-planning of how you're going to prioritize yourself in this period might be quite important, even if it's just small segments. Next, an important thing to do is to qualify and quantify your need. So that's again, that overall sense of just burning calories throughout the day. So with the effects of decreased sleep and decreased energy and all these things that can happen, it's very easy for your overall steps, for example, that might be tracked with an Apple Watch, Fitbit, Garmin, your phone, whatever works for you, is to have it quantified and steady. Because you might not be aware that you might have previously been walking this much or expending this much, for example. But now over time, due to the busy life and again, the fatigue effects, etc., decreasing down to here. So just having that quantified, you can actually see the changes and go for a realistic baseline versus just get in when I can or just do more. Or if you're feeling tired, going down too low. Just a nice clear baseline really makes things handy there. Next, this might sound like a surprising one, is to move your schedule just where you can towards where you're going to sleep best. Obviously, the sleep and negative effects can be notorious. It varies, but can be notorious. So if you just notice you are someone who can get better sleep earlier in the night, but then you wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, it's incredibly common. I deal with this all the time with clients. You just might find that moving your bedtime a little bit earlier and then waking up at an earlier time is more realistic and allows you to get better sleep than trying to force the old nighttime schedule of falling asleep later and then waking up at 4 a.m. anyway. Because that person's going to have less sleep and they're working against the body rather than with it. Next is qualifying your snacks and your hunger. So for example, maybe previously you would have had a 400 calorie muffin a couple of days a week. Now you might just have pre-planned kids chips packs or something along those lines. That might be 100 calories. Because you're going to be getting these cravings more often, it's more important to have low calorically dense strategies that still work for you if you're getting these signals more often. So look, we've laid out a few different strategies. The good news is they work. It requires more thinking, and don't get me wrong, I've worked with plenty of people, and dealing with I don't even touch base on it, but dealing with the mental weight of these changes is a whole thing in of itself, along with these physiology style things we're trying to navigate. And getting it right is such a rewarding feeling for people, because I know there's such a large degree of pain that can be corresponded with going through these times. But good news is there are strategies that work. If you want to work with me with coaching in the description, I guarantee this will work. Money back guarantee. I'm putting it out there. But in the meantime, while we're trying to navigate through these things, I want you to overall have a sense of belief that you can start to get these results. It does take the first step of acknowledging things have changed. They have, you're not crazy, it is real. But there are real strategies that work. Last thing I want to leave you with is this. The effects are real, 100%. But I'd encourage you to stop fighting against your body, adding more stress to this and not having the right strategies that would make it even harder. And instead start to work with it, with strategies that know that they're going to work with your hunger, cravings, and lifestyle. If you're curious for more of these tips and strategies, plenty of the other videos in this channel also do correlate with the same things that people struggle with menopause, nighttime eatings, cravings, etc. But I want to wish you luck in your journey. It can be done, but it just takes more thought. You got this.